Well, good morning, everybody. Is that too loud? Leadership, management, organizational theory have all been built on what I believe to be an outdated assumption. That is that human beings manage only other human beings within the context of an organization. Today, organizations are becoming instead socio-material assemblages of people and things, carbon and silicon working together. That's the new reality, or at least it's the hope. Despite the image, which my wife says makes me look like a hypnotherapist that can help you quit smoking, I'm a senior strategist for cloud, data, and AI at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and I've just finished my PhD in Agentic AI, specifically within the high-stakes financial services industry. It's a real pleasure to have been invited here to speak at AICon, to share the stage and the room with thought leaders, some amazing things that we've heard in the other room earlier and from the sessions that have taken place in the AI Next track this morning. Despite my accent, I'm now live in Belfast, have done for the past 5 years. Love it here, love the fact that we have great events here like this, and I think that its unique position in the world, given its, how can I put it, geopolitical relationships, I think will pave the way for a very bright future in terms of sovereign AI, data foundries, all types of exciting things. What I want to share with you this morning is some of the insights that I've gleaned from my travels and my conversations with IT and business leaders throughout the world, and some of the uncomfortable lessons and learnings around the agentic AI space. And my talk is about the agentic edge. I believe that we're at the edge of the blurred, the frayed edge of human innovation. And we've got to be very careful now and considered in what we do next in order to be able to take advantage of the amazing opportunities that it affords us. In technology, you guys will all know that no 2 days are the same. We've witnessed boundless digital transformation that's reshaped almost every facet of our life and work, and it's been something to behold. But I believe that the emergence of AI agents, not just the ones that we've got today, but if we cast our minds forward into the future as we start to sidle up to super intelligent agentic AI as well, it's not just another phase. It's not just another plot on a linear curve. It's a rupture, as I see it. It's a fault line in how organizations work. If we act early, and we've just heard some evidence from Allstate where it's clear that some of the things that I'm talking about today are already being considered. If we act early, we'll bridge the gap. If we don't, complacency will widen it. We've seen cases where geological fissures like this start very small and become chasms because they're ignored. We don't want that to happen with agentic AI. It's time to get real, folks. It's time to recognize that AI adoption is an accelerating onward march, but governance models, the models that we use to manage and govern our firms, are human-centric. They're tied to old logic and old thinking. We've got to change that. Leadership structures, too, are sometimes misaligned with the systems and the people that they are meant to steer. Organizations are now exposed to new forms of ethical, operational, and reputational risk that needs to be fixed. And boards, CIOs, and regulators are searching for frameworks that will help them in the coming years to circumnavigate some of these issues. That was the inspiration for the book that I'm in the process of writing. Hope to have it released next year. Some of the stuff that I talk about today is very new. Bear with me. But it's meant to be the distillation of a doctorate, removing some of the dense, academic, esoteric stuff and making it digestible and hopefully a useful framework for how your companies and yourselves might think about and govern AI in the future. Leaders now manage assemblages of people and things. Gareth just asked a question of Stephen at the end there. If you could have one takeaway from your talk, I know you've not asked me this, but I'm going to answer it anyway. It would be that our carbon bodies, if you like, and this sounds philosophical as well, but our carbon bodies extend into the silicon, right? The best AI, the best agentic AI is an extension of good humans, good goals, well-intentioned, well-governed, that expand the capabilities of a company that considers the outputs, considers the impacts. That helps you to make sure that your organizational identity, your morals, your ethics aren't lost when you relinquish control. They are extended and amplified when you relinquish control. I think that is a key thing that keeps me grounded when I talk to companies about whether indeed they're actually doing that or not, or are they just launching tools and seeing what happens? Because I think that can be quite dangerous. Strategy, risk management, accountability structures, the way we make decisions that weren't designed for this new era, and they all need to adapt. All the frameworks that we've used, all the amazing research that they're based on collapse under the velocity, the complexity, and the opacity of AI. I believe that AI can have hugely positive impacts on society and work, but I also believe it could amplify and exacerbate some of the worst things that happen too, if we're not careful. It's a paradigm that leaves in its wake a shattered canon of masterful works, amazing management thinkers that worked throughout the 20th and 21st century to work out how firms should be managed, how people should be incentivized, how teams should be governed, and what have you. It needs to be either abandoned or adapted for it to have continued relevance. I've always been a glutton for punishment and extracurricular study, and during my MBA, we looked at some of these academics and scholarly pieces of work, and one of the things that stuck out to me most was agency theory, in particular a part of agency theory called principal agent theory. Principal agent theory is very simple. A principal comes up with some rules, the agents all follow it. You govern by making sure that the agents have done what the principal asked. I started to reflect on this as a bit of a geek moment on a bike ride or a walk or something. I said, hang on a minute. What about the great financial crash of 2008? How does principal agent stand up against new forms of algorithmic agents and super intelligent agents in the future? What I thought of was principal multi-agent theory, or a principal multi-agent mess. The traders that came up with the collateralized debt obligations and rolling mortgage products into big clusters and then selling those on and insuring themselves against losses, they were making human decisions about that. Morally contemptible, but clever maths, okay? But they were limited only by their own brains and their own selfishness. My eureka moment, if you like, was that these people, these investment bankers, are now the ones training machines to work in their image. Now, Hollywood might be wrong about investment bankers, and all the films that you've watched might be completely incorrect, but I had this idea that those people have a high appetite for risk. Sometimes they're portrayed as greedy. They love money, and they like to do things that generate more and more money. And so is there a risk that they could bake their biases, predilections, their greed, their appetite towards risk into the algorithms in undetectable ways? In the post-crash years, CEOs of banks became vicariously liable for everything that happens nestled deep, deep below them in the strata of the organization. Governance gap is what I thought. Governance mess. It became the focus of my PhD. I decided to focus on 2 investment banks. I gained access through the work that I do professionally into those banks, thankfully, keeping them anonymous as I did so. I looked at the way that AI was conceived, the way it was deployed, the way that it was governed, particularly in the area of high-frequency trading. This is the edge, okay? This is the agentic edge for me because rather than agents that can help you with your diary or drive some other business process for you, this really is a powerful delegation of a task, right? Investment bankers, quant developers, mathematicians saying, we need to build a machine that does this based on this data set, and off you run with it. And I wanted to focus on this study as well because the bullwhip effect of the financial crash was felt absolutely everywhere on Earth, save for a few places. Here's what I found. Tales from the edge. Huge delta between ordained guidance and actual behavior on the ground. Massive gap, okay? The leaders that I spoke to talked about how great their diktats were, how clear their goals were and their strategy, and how united everybody was. As I moved further down the organization, what I witnessed was interpretive flexibility. People look at guidance, all of us do. Human beings are weak, fallible, all of us. And we look at guidance through our own lens. And we read it and we think, maybe that doesn't quite apply to me in the way that it's written here. And that goes down again to the expert core of the organization. People who got involved in those organizations, not necessarily because they wanted to further the goals of a bank, but because they love to develop stuff, right? The amount of drift that occurs in the governance from on high, or what actually happens on the ground, was huge. But also ethical dissonance. Risk officers are preoccupied, as they should be, with good governance, risk, ethics, control, explainability, all that type of stuff. Some other people don't care. And we've got to remember that in the ways that we govern. Governance can feel very dry and boring and punitive, and that's got to change now because the people that most need to govern are nestled within the organization. They need to feel that governance is somehow useful to them, that it's not a stick to beat them with, and that it's not something that will stifle their sometimes awesome creativity in the process. Great deal of unpredictability in the process too, but the biggest thing that I found, spoiled by the larger font in the middle, is that human nature, I believe, is still the biggest systemic risk to AI. Whatever we might think of ourselves, we exist on a good to evil spectrum. We've created some amazing things, but we've done some incredible damage to ourselves and to each other. With our hands on the red button of AI, we've got to be very careful. My book is aimed at distilling this down to folks, I'm sure like yourself, who don't want to trawl through pages of content only designed for my PhD supervisor to read. So I've tried to distill it down into a 4A model. Autonomy, accountability, alignment, and adaptation. And this is not meant to override or overwrite what you do in governance today, but instead fill the interstitial space between, update certain aspects of it so that you've got something that's relevant and that you're able to move forward with. Autonomy really is what makes AI very, very different from all the things that have come before. It's the reason why I call it a rupture and not a kind of evolution in that sense. AI can act without specific instruction. I know Stuart Russell talks about the percept of AI, and that's true for now, but my sense is that going forward, AI systems will need less and less instruction, will start to learn from themselves and establish knowledge and information meshes that they share information with. Autonomy can mean model drift, machine learning that changes over time. It can mean feedback loops where mistakes and errors and biases are amplified and reinforced over time. Inherited workflows from legacy applications that work their way into modern AI, just because systems now have their tendrils everywhere, including with external agents and APIs and suppliers that might feed into your AI work, each operating with their own logic and their own governance, by the way. So you get this kind of, conglomerate, really, of different challenges that challenge autonomy. And the biggest risk, of course, is the unseen nature, the outcomes that no one expected, the outcomes that nobody can explain or trace. And it's through autonomy audits that I think we are going to be able to move through this challenge area in particular, looking at where decisions occur without our oversight, looking at where overrides are impossible or even ignored, and where systems resist intervention, creating runaway train scenarios. It's not a one-time exercise either. These systems evolve. So just as you remap a coastline after a devastating flood, you must do the same every time the onward march of AI continues. Are we doing things that are still relevant? Are we still protected here? Do we have the transparency, traceability that we need to control all of our exploits? In human-only organizations, accountability is clear. Someone signs off on something, someone owns the decision, and we crack on. In AI, it's different, and this is the responsibility gap that we've all got to address now. Designers assume that operators will carry accountability. Operators think that it rests with executives. Executives think that they've got compliance teams handling all of this for them. So it's hunky-dory. Meanwhile, when things go wrong, no one can trace the chain. People become defensive. They shield then their models and thinking from other people, which pushes issues down rather than raising them to the fore. This is where we need to map accountability, tracing every step, every touch point that an AI system interacts with, making sure that we've got the right data collection, the right decision makers at each stage, mapping who owns the outcomes, not just the critical impacts, and looking at shadow ownership where it exists, the things that no one claims in the process. They are your risk hotspots. Those are the points at which you've got to remedy and ensure that when things go wrong, there's someone with the ownership and the incentive to fix them. Finally, adaptation. As the gap between what directors and practitioners did was huge. The misalignment there, not always malicious, but it definitely existed. Executives measure success in shareholder value, compliance, reputation. Developers measure it in accuracy, speed, and elegant code. Those incentives aren't natural bedfellows. They're not always aligned. And so as strategy moves through the hierarchy, you've got to make sure that it is understood and accepted, that reinterpretation is fine, provided it's not recast and unrecognizable from its original form. You've got to have alignment scorecards that keep those things in check, mission versus metrics modeling that compare company values with key performance indicators, making sure that they're all aligned, and cross-functional reality testing. Stephen talked about his involvement in some of the things that engineers are doing. I think that is crucial as well, because it cannot be a splinter cell within the organization. It has to be part of the fabric of what the organization does, understood from the top, understood below, and everywhere in between. It's like an orchestra. You've got the violins that are strung up and ready to go, all of the brass sounding amazing, but if one other tiny thing misfires or isn't sounding right, you get a cacophony of unwanted white noise. And that is what we need to avoid here in this realm. Adaptation is where governance collapses. Governance is static at the minute. It's not based on dynamic norms that are now possible with AI. It has to adapt, it has to be responsive, it has to recognize decentralized authority. It has to have experimentation built in, but with reversibility. And continuous oversight is needed so that innovation can continue without being straitjacketed by governance, but keeping a sense of what is going on. Adaptation in governance is like moving from a static map to a GPS system. Recalculating the route, recalibrating when things change in order that you're still on course. I know that we are coming to the top of time here, but a few other points that I want to mention, culture being a key one. Culture resists change, is in my experience. It clings to the way that things have always been done. We've got to unshackle ourselves from that type of thinking. We've got to make sure that we surface culture, that we understand it, and that it doesn't slow us down. We've got to make sure that we build responsible, ethical, and explainable AI. We've got to look at the regulatory pressures that are bearing down upon us, hold open the lid to some of our systems, our data, and crucially, human involvement. All of the regulation that I've read says we're going to be okay because humans are in the loop, they're on the loop, they're in command. But my research has said that that alone is not enough. Humans are not good enough as the final arbiter of what happens here. We've got to do it collectively. We've got to make sure that it's well governed throughout if we're going to see the right results. So that's why I say it's time for a reset. Traditional oversight isn't working. We've got to set policies that lay out clear intent around AI systems, practices that embed those protocols that respond when, not if, something goes wrong. We've got to elevate our awareness at board level. We've got to make sure that our code and our people are well governed. Ultimately, it's all about choreography, the orchestration of humans and machines, formal rules and informal rituals. That's how we navigate the agentic edge. That's how we succeed rather than fail. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention this morning.